Challenger. The day NASA stood still. On the morning of January 28, 1986, America looked to the sky. A space shuttle stood tall on Launch Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, its white body gleaming in the cold sunlight. For months, children across the country had been waiting for this moment, because this time, among the astronauts, was one of their own. Her name was Christa McAuliffe, a 37-year-old schoolteacher from New Hampshire, chosen from thousands to become the first civilian in space. She had promised her students she would teach lessons from orbit. The nation was captivated. It was a launch meant to inspire a generation. But 73 seconds after liftoff, it became a tragedy the world would never forget. 1. The morning of hope. That morning, the air was colder than usual. Icicles hung from the launch platform, an uncommon sight in Florida. Engineers voiced concern about the low temperatures. The shuttle's solid rocket boosters had rubber seals called O-rings designed to prevent hot gases from escaping during launch. Some believed the cold might make those seals brittle. But after several previous delays, pressure to launch was enormous. School networks were preparing live broadcasts. The president had scheduled remarks. The nation's eyes were fixed on the countdown clock. At 11:38 a.m., Challenger's main engines roared to life. The shuttle rose into the sky. Brilliant, powerful, flawless. Applause erupted in the viewing stands. Families of the astronauts cheered, waving small American flags as the vehicle arced upward into the blue. 73 seconds later, a white flash appeared. Then came two diverging plumes, twisting, silent, unreal. For a moment, no one understood what they were seeing. Then gasps spread through the crowd. The unthinkable had happened. 2. The explosion on television screens around the world. The shuttle seemed to bloom like a flower of smoke against the sky. News anchors fell silent. At first, they didn't say explosion, they said anomaly, but everyone watching knew what they were witnessing. Pieces of the shuttle rained down into the Atlantic. In mission control, the room froze. Flight Director Jay Green's voice cut through the static. Flight controllers, stay at your consoles. We'll collect all data. There were no survivors. The 7 astronauts, Francis Dick Scobie, Michael Smith, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, and Christa McAuliffe, were lost. It was a moment of collective heartbreak. Teachers cried in classrooms. Parents turned off televisions. The dream of the space shuttle, once a symbol of American pride, lay shattered in the sky. 3. The aftermath. Within hours, NASA halted all launches. President Reagan addressed the nation that evening from the Oval Office. His speech remains one of the most powerful in history. He said, "The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them. This morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. The country mourned. Flags were lowered to half-staff. The families of the crew gathered in grief, and NASA faced its most devastating reckoning since Apollo 1. 4. Searching for answers. The president appointed a special commission to investigate the disaster. It was led by former Secretary of State William Rogers, with members including astronaut Neil Armstrong, physicist Richard Feynman, and Air Force General Donald Katina. What they discovered shocked the nation. Engineers at Morton Thiokol The company that built the solid rocket boosters had warned about the O-rings. They had data showing that cold temperatures could cause them to fail. But those warnings were ignored. Managers, under pressure to meet launch schedules, believed the risk was acceptable. In his testimony, Richard Feynman dipped a piece of O-ring material into a glass of ice water. When he pulled it out, he showed how stiff and inflexible it had become. Then he looked at the cameras and said, "For a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled." That single act cut through bureaucracy more sharply than any report could. 5. The human cost. For NASA's engineers and flight controllers, the tragedy was personal. Many had worked side by side with the crew for years. Some had children the same age as Christa McAuliffe's students. The psychological toll was immense. In the months that followed, NASA's culture of optimism gave way to reflection. The agency realized that it had drifted from its own principles, the lessons learned after Apollo 1. Risk had become routine. Success had become expected. One engineer later said, "We stopped being afraid of space, and that's when we made mistakes." 6. Rebirth. The shuttle fleet was grounded for nearly 3 years. NASA redesigned.